Chapter 1. The Transmigration and the Truth. Hidden in the second half. Evan never expected his life to end with overtime, instant noodles, and the blinding light of his phone screen. At 3 a.m., half asleep and half dead inside, he flipped to the next chapter of the web novel Oath of Steel. He had only reached the midpoint. In his knowledge, the story went like this. The alpha villain suffers betrayal from everyone. He falls into darkness, becomes a ruthless Mafia lord, fights the Enigma hero, and eventually dies by the hero's sword. He believed it, because that was all he had read. What he didn't know what the author hid in the unread chapters was that the fight and death were staged. The hero could never kill the villain, because the hero was never the heroine's love interest. Because the hero had only ever loved the villain. But Evan didn't know any of that. But he was about to find that out. Sleep stole him before he could reach the truth. And when he opened his eyes, he wasn't in his cheap rented room. He wasn't in his thin mattress. He wasn't Evan anymore. He was in a silk-draped, gold-trimmed bedroom. He was in the body of Kelvin Throne. The alpha villain fated to die. Kelvin Throne. The villain the world created. Memories flooded him like a tidal wave, sharp and merciless. Kelvin Throne wasn't born evil. He was born loved. He and Ares Kale grew up side by side, two boys bound by laughter, secrets, and a childhood promise that one day they would marry. Ares, an enigma with a rare command-type pheromone. And Kelvin, an alpha with a wild, untamed core. They were inseparable, until the accident. Kelvin's parents died in a car crash. But the truth shown through memory fragments was far bloodier. It was orchestrated. A power struggle. A betrayal from their own people. The boy who once laughed freely became a wolf forced into a cage of survival. Kelvin begged for help. He waited for someone, anyone, to save him. No one came. And the only person who truly loved him was away. Ares Kale had been sent to another city, grinding himself into steel to become the nation's future commander. When Ares returned, ready to propose, ready to protect the boy he adored, he found Kelvin gone. Gone from the world of light. Gone from innocence. Gone from the path they once dreamed of. Instead, Kelvin had built an empire of darkness, a Mafia throne carved from blood and vengeance. He hunted down every person who betrayed him. He burned their legacies. He destroyed their networks. He became the villain the public feared. Not because he loved destruction, but because the world had taught him that only power protected. To Evan, who now lived in Kelvin's body, it was horrifying. To Kelvin, in his real past, it had been survival. Ares Kale. The hero obsessed since childhood. Here was the truth Evan never reached in the novel. Ares. Kale never saw Kelvin as a villain. Ares never saw him as an enemy. He saw him as his best friend, his first love, his only obsession. During training, Ares kept a notebook filled with Kelvin's drawings every birthday he missed, every holiday he couldn't return for, every night he cried because he couldn't be there to protect him. He clung to the promise they made as children. When we grow up, we'll marry each other. He trained to become strong enough to do that. But when he finally returned, shining with medals and reputation, Kelvin didn't welcome him. Or Kelvin didn't smile at him. Kelvin didn't run into his arms. Kelvin didn't even believe in him anymore. Because Kelvin believed Ares had abandoned him when he needed him most. To Kelvin, Ares was now the bright, righteous commander, the exact opposite of the Mafia lord he had become. Kelvin thought, he's changed. He belongs to the world now. He'll look at me like I'm filth. But Ares thought, he's still mine. He'll always be mine. I'll bring him back even if the world burns. Ares tried to talk to Kelvin, but Kelvin pushed him away. Ares never used force, never captured him, never arrested him. Why? Because Ares learned the truth of Kelvin's dark empire. Kelvin wasn't harming innocents. He was punishing the ones responsible for his parents' murder, the corrupt officials, the underground syndicates, the powerful families that destroyed him. Ares realized Kelvin became a villain because he was left alone. And he still loved him. And Ares still loved him. So the fight in the novel? It was a play, an act. A fake climax devised so villains still remaining would reveal themselves. Evan, however, never reached that part. He only knew Kelvin would die. Now, he was Kelvin. In this body, in this fate, with no idea how to survive. Evan, now Kelvin, opens his eyes to a terrifying truth. When Evan awoke in Kelvin's body, he didn't get a warm welcome. He got a stack of reports about Mafia wars, blood on Kelvin's sleeves, enemies plotting, the world calling him a villain, and one name printed everywhere: Ares Kale, the hero, the nation's commander. The man Evan assumed was the female lead's destined lover. But the memories in Kelvin's head told a different story. Ares' eyes always followed him. Ares always found him no matter where Kelvin ran. Ares never let anyone else near Kelvin. Ares never loved the FL. Ares was obsessed possessively, painfully, entirely obsessed with Kelvin. Evan's stomach dropped. He wasn't a villain fated to die. He was the hero's lifelong obsession. And Evan had no idea how to survive a man like Ares Kale. He didn't know Ares was already searching for him. Didn't know Ares had heard Kelvin was drinking alone at a bar. Didn't know Ares was seconds away from reuniting with him after years of longing. Evan didn't know that Kelvin's destiny was not death, but possession. Chapter 2. The bar, the kiss, and the public outburst. Evan, now Kelvin Throne, had become frighteningly good at living the villain's life. Weeks passed. He adapted to Kelvin's memories, to his empire, to his ruthlessness, to his aching loneliness. He read Kelvin's documents, his past, his contacts, his wounds, and made one promise. He would finish what Kelvin couldn't. He would hunt down every last person who destroyed Kelvin's family. Evan had liked Kelvin when reading the novel, but now, living Kelvin's pain, he sympathized, he understood, he raged. And on nights when vengeance weighed heavy on his shoulders, Kelvin Throne, Mafia, Lord of the Underworld, drowned his thoughts in alcohol. Tonight was one of those nights, the bar where fate intervened. The bar was dim, warm, filled with smoke and hushed murmurs. Kelvin sat in the corner booth, collar loosened, fingers wrapped around a glass of whiskey. He drank slow. He drank bitterly. He drank to forget the heaviness in Kelvin's memories. He had no idea that across the bar, behind shadows and dark sunglasses, someone was watching him, tracking him. Like always, Ares Kale, commander of Country X, Enigma, hero of the nation, Kelvin's childhood friend. Kelvin thought Ares had simply walked into the bar coincidentally. The truth? Ares knew the moment Kelvin stepped out of his mansion. He knew the route Kelvin took. He knew the exact booth Kelvin sat in. He could even sense the shift in Kelvin's heartbeat when he drank too fast. Ares had been tracking him for months. Kelvin just didn't know it. To Kelvin, he was being watched. To Ares, he was guarding what was his. Kelvin stumbles. Ares moves instantly. After his fourth drink, Kelvin stood. He regretted it immediately. The world spun. The ground tilted. His knees wavered. Before he could fall, strong arms wrapped around his waist. Kelvin's breath hitched as he found himself pressed against a warm, broad chest. Ares Kale. His dark eyes were filled with something raw years of longing, pain, hunger, and a devotion sharp enough to wound. Ares whispered, voice warm against Kelvin's ear, "You're still beautiful enough to ruin me." Kelvin froze. Evan inside. Kelvin screamed internally. "Ruin you? Since when? Why are you looking at me like that? This was not in the chapters I read." Kelvin pushed lightly at Ares' chest, but Ares wasn't letting go. Not tonight. The kiss that shouldn't have happened. Ares' gaze locked onto Kelvin's lips, slowly descending, step by step, thought by thought, and Kelvin, still dizzy, still confused, had no time to react. Ares held his jaw gently and kissed him. Not soft, not hesitant, but slow, hungry, desperate. A kiss years in the making. A kiss Ares had imagined 1,000 times in silence. A kiss that made Kelvin's mind blank. He tasted of heat and restraint breaking all at once. Kelvin's breath shuddered. Ares' fingers tightened at his waist. No one dared speak. Until Livia interrupts and the world shatters. "Commander, what are you doing?" The moment cracked like glass. Livia Lucanient, the Omega girl who had been claiming to be Ares' girlfriend for months, stood frozen at the entrance, eyes wide with betrayal. Kelvin blinked. Ares stiffened, annoyance flashing through him with lethal speed. The entire bar turned silent. Livia screeched, pointing dramatically. "I'm your girlfriend." Ares turned toward her slowly, cold, irritated, dangerously angry. "Girlfriend?" His tone could cut steel. "Who told you that?" Livia trembled. "We've been dating for months. Everyone knows." The lies. Livia spread. Kelvin, remembering the rumors, swallowed. He'd heard. The commander has a secret Omega girlfriend. She visits his office every day. He treats her gently. They're the upcoming CP of the nation. It matched the half-story Evan knew. But the truth? Ares had ignored every rumor because he was busy doing other things, like stalking Kelvin, protecting Kelvin, watching Kelvin sleep from afar, intercepting assassination attempts Kelvin never knew about, tracking Kelvin's every move. He never corrected the rumors simply because he didn't give a damn. As long as Kelvin didn't see Livia as a threat, Ares didn't bother. But tonight she interrupted Kelvin's kiss. Ares' tolerance snapped. The public confession. Kelvin tried to slip away in the chaos. Bad idea. Ares grabbed his wrist instantly, fingers locking like steel, refusing to let go. He pulled Kelvin behind him, shielding him as if Livia was a threat. And in a voice cold enough to silence the entire bar, Ares said, "I have never loved you." Livia's face drained of color. Ares stepped forward, eyes blazing with truth. "I tolerated you. Nothing more." Gasps filled the room. Livia shook, voice breaking. But everyone thought." Ares cut her off. "The only person I've ever wanted, ever loved, ever chased, is him." He dragged Kelvin forward. People screamed. Phones clicked. The bar erupted. The commander kissed the Mafia lord? Are they childhood friends? Is this a love triangle? Kelvin's soul shriveled. Evan screamed mentally. This wasn't in the book. Ari's claim, Kelvin's escape attempt. Ares ignored every whisper, every camera, every stunned face. His focus was only Kelvin. He pulled Kelvin close, voice low. "Come home with me." Kelvin yanked his hand away. "No." Ares stopped, smiled. A slow, dark, terrifyingly fond smile. The kind that promised destruction wrapped in love. Ares leaned down, voice intimate enough for only Kelvin to hear. "Then I'll follow you everywhere." A vow, a threat, a confession, a promise. Kelvin's heart skipped. Evan's soul nearly exploded. And that night, the country learned. The stoic commander was in love with the Mafia lord. The Mafia lord had kissed him back. And this was only the beginning. Evan, whose soul was in Kelvin's body, finally understood that the second half of the story, which he didn't got the chance to read, was the main plot. And he finally realized that the story's main couple are Kelvin and Ares, not Ares and Livia, and that it's an Alpha X Enigma story. Chapter 3. The 9-month obsessive courtship. The kiss should have ruined everything. After that night, when Ares Kale commander of the entire military force, pressed his trembling lips against Kelvin's and whispered a confession he had held on to since childhood. Kelvin vanished. Not metaphorically. He vanished. He refused calls, ignored messages, and disappeared from every public eye, as if the Mafia lord had dissolved into smoke. He wanted distance. He wanted clarity. He wanted to forget how his heart had hammered in his chest when Ares had kissed him like Kelvin was something sacred. But Ares? Ares did not believe in distance. Ares believed in claiming, and the world saw it. The country's hottest obsession. News headlines turned into a national circus. Commander Ares Kale courts the Mafia lord. Day 32 of the commander's failed marriage proposal. What no reporter dared to print but everyone whispered was, "The commander is in love." Not politely, not quietly. Insanely, territorial, unhinged. Ari's daily obsession. Every single morning like a ritual of devotion. 1. National military parades outside Kelvin's Mafia mansion. Generals, captains, soldiers, marching in perfect formation. Neighbors took videos, the internet exploded. 2. Breakfast prepared by soldiers. 40 elite officers standing in Kelvin's courtyard at 7 a.m. sharp, holding trays of freshly cooked food. Kelvin refused to open the door. They left it anyway. 3. Handwritten love letters. Letters so poetic, so raw, the Mafia boys cried reading them. Kelvin burned them. Ares wrote twice as many. 4. Helicopters dropping rose petals. Thousands. Enough to bury the roof in red. Kelvin's subordinates complained about allergies. 5. Ares personally standing outside his gate for hours. Not moving, not blinking, sometimes in the rain, sometimes holding a ring box, always waiting. Kelvin finally cracked one day, opened the gate slightly and hissed, "You're insane." Ares smiled softly, the kind of smile that made grown assassins flinch. Insanely in love. The underworld trembles. Kelvin's subordinates were suffering more than him. They gathered like traumatized schoolchildren. "Boss, please just accept him," one whispered. Another trembled. "He made the chief assassin do push-ups for saying you weren't home." A third cried, "He terrifies us, boss." Kelvin groaned, dragging a hand through his hair. Evan, the colder, more ruthless side of his personality, wanted to shoot Ares. Kelvin, the one who still remembered childhood, wanted to not think too much. Kelvin tries to escape, and Ares treats it like a romantic treasure hunt. Kelvin hides in another city. Ares appears within 12 hours. Casual, calm, blocking the only exit of the hotel. Kelvin hides underground. Ares digs him out. With soldiers, with equipment, with zero shame. Kelvin escapes by boat. Ares swims after him. Through freezing water. With the ring in his mouth because he refused to drop it. Kelvin's scream was heard across the lake. "Stop following me!" Ares climbed onto the boat, dripping wet, eyes gentle. "Why? I'm your future husband." Kelvin threw a net at him. Ares wore it like a scarf. Why Kelvin ran? Everyone thought he was avoiding love. But Kelvin knew the truth. He'd missed Ares long before the kiss. He'd always felt something tugging him back toward the boy who used to cling to him. But the day Ares came to him in uniform, silver badges shining, voice cold from training, telling him to stop his Mafia activities because "I'll protect you. Just quit. Let me handle the danger." Kelvin thought Ares had become his enemy. Not knowing, Ares didn't want to stop him. He wanted to save him, even from Kelvin's own darkness. Memories resurface. It hit Kelvin slowly, quietly, like a bruise blooming under the skin. Ares at 14, crying silently when Kelvin left for underground training. Ares at 16, holding Kelvin's hand under the table because Kelvin had nightmares. Ares at 18, promising with teary determination, "When I become strong enough, I'll marry you." And Kelvin had laughed back then. Now that promise felt like a chain wrapped around his heart. The breaking point. 9 months. 9 months of relentless courting. 9 months of the country watching this insane, beautiful chase. 9 months of Ares showing a devotion that felt like worship. One night, Kelvin opened his mansion door. Ares was there. Again. Standing quietly, hands behind his back, eyes soft, like Kelvin was the sunrise he'd waited lifetimes for. Kelvin stepped closer. Ares froze, breath caught. The moonlight made Kelvin's eyes glitter, cold, tired, but finally, surrendering. Kelvin exhaled, barely a whisper. Fine, I'll be yours. Ares dropped to his knees instantly, not as a commander, not as the nation's strongest man, but as a boy who had loved Kelvin his entire life. He wrapped his arms around Kelvin's waist, burying his face against him like he was terrified Kelvin might change his mind. Kelvin. Kelvin. Thank you. I've been waiting my whole life. Don't take it back, please. Kelvin's fingers trembled as they threaded through Ares' hair. Evan inside him whispered, Finally. Kelvin whispered, Stand up, idiot. Ares didn't stand. He held him tighter. The entire Mafia household watched from behind windows. Someone sobbed. Someone fainted. Someone whispered, Commander Kale is beyond obsessed. And Kelvin? He finally let himself smile. Small, reluctant, but real. Because Ares Kale was insane. But he was insane for him. Chapter 4. Marriage and double hell for their enemies. The moment Kelvin said yes, the world went insane. Not the quiet, civilized kind. The nationwide festival kind. Fireworks. Street celebrations. Live news tracking. Ares' victory run back to headquarters. People crying and hugging strangers. Betting sites crashing instantly. It was, according to the headlines, the Mafia Lord Alpha accepts the commander. The world believed the same foolish thing. The Mafia era was over. Ares. Kale had tamed the untamable. They had no idea how wrong they were. The luxury wedding of the century. The wedding was so extravagant that even foreign royal families admitted defeat. The venue, a private glass palace built overnight by Ares military engineers, floated above a lake. Rose petals drifted with every breeze. Diamond chandeliers reflected on the water like stars caught in a bottle. Kelvin walked the aisle like a dark deity, black suit tailored to his perfection, silver embroidery marking his Mafia lineage. His presence froze the crowd. Ares, waiting at the altar, looked wrecked with emotion. Eyes shining, jaw trembling, hands clenched because he couldn't run to Kelvin and kiss the life out of him in front of the priests. When Kelvin reached him, Ares whispered, Tell me to breathe. Kelvin coughed, suddenly flustered. Breathe? Ares inhaled sharply like that single word brought him back to life. Their vows were simple. Ares, I have loved you since childhood. I will love you in every lifetime. Kelvin, if you annoy me, I'll throw you off this palace. Ares, please do. The audience cried. Kelvin's Mafia men fainted. Ares' generals wiped tears aggressively. When they finally kissed, the live broadcast broke records. Reality. The world is wrong. The public believed, now that Kelvin married the commander, he'll stop being a Mafia lord. They did not understand Kelvin, nor did they understand Ares, because the marriage only made them 10x more dangerous. Kelvin continued torturing villains, breaking bones, extracting confessions, destroying gangs, but now he didn't kill them. He simply handed the list to Ares. And Ares, smiling beautifully, made their lives 100 times worse. Villains began praying, Please bring back the old Mafia lord. He was kind. Ares would answer kindly, Touch my husband again and you'll beg for hell. Kelvin rolled his eyes. Ares kissed his cheek. Kelvin slapped him. Ares smiled wider. Mr. Kale, domestic chaos begins. Marriage did not civilize them. It made them domestic menaces. Ares steals a kiss every 5 minutes. In the kitchen. In the car. in front of soldiers, during Mafia meetings. Kelvin throws pillows, daggers, a vase once. Ares caught it midair and kissed him harder. Ares sleep? Hugs Kelvin like a koala. Kelvin wakes up suffocating. Ares, let go. No, you're warm. Kelvin kicks him off the bed. Ares climbs back in seconds. Kelvin threatens divorce daily. Ares laughs because Kelvin blushes when he says it. One evening, Kelvin, I'll divorce you. Ares, smiling. Say it again, your ears turned red. Kelvin, shut up. Mafia guards outside hear the thuds and assume war has begun. The consummation. Ari's true obsession unleashed. The wedding night should have been romantic. It wasn't. It was feral. As soon as they entered the honeymoon suite, Ares locked the door, grabbed Kelvin's waist, and kissed him with 9 months of hunger. Kelvin shoved him away. Ares pinned him to the wall gently but unmovingly. Kelvin, he whispered, voice trembling. I've waited too long. Kelvin swore under his breath, then let Ares pick him up, carry him to the bed, and kiss him like worship. Hours passed. The world outside disappeared. Ares left kisses across Kelvin's neck, warm, soft, dangerously possessive. Until finally, he bit down. Kelvin gasped. The room spun. The bond snapped into place, burning bright and permanent. Ares held him tightly through it, whispering, You're mine, forever. If you try to leave me again, the mark won't let you. I won't let you. Kelvin glared weakly. Ares kissed the glare away. Ares' permanent mark. The mark glowed faintly on Kelvin's skin, unbreakable, undeniable, binding him to the commander for life. It meant Kelvin cannot disappear again. Kelvin cannot reject him. Kelvin cannot be claimed by anyone else. Ares will always feel where Kelvin is. Ares will reach him instantly if he is hurt. Ares brushed his thumb over the mark, eyes dark. If you ever run again, he murmured, I'll chain you to our bed. Kelvin, try it. I'll stab you. Ares kissed him so softly Kelvin forgot to breathe. And their consummation remains unaffected from the outside world. Two monsters in love, late night. Kelvin, exhausted after work, collapses onto the couch. Ares immediately climbs on top of him, hugging him like a giant koala. Kelvin, get off. Ares, no. Kelvin, I'm suffocating. Ares, die in my arms then. Kelvin sighs. Ares cups his face, kisses his cheek. That's my husband. Kelvin doesn't admit it aloud, but he smiles into the kiss. Because double hell or not, they were perfect for each other. Chapter 5. M-preg, twins, and a territorial enigma. 10 months after marriage, Kelvin Throne, the former Mafia lord, woke up feeling normal. But Ares didn't. Ares stood frozen beside their bed, pupils dilated, expression unreadable. His heartbeat thundered, breath uneven. He wasn't even looking at Kelvin. He was listening. Very carefully, very intensely. Kelvin blinked. What? Why are you staring like a psycho again? Ares didn't respond. He simply took 2 slow steps forward, placed a trembling hand on Kelvin's lower stomach and whispered, voice breaking, There are 3 heartbeats. Kelvin frowned. What 3? I have 1, obviously. Ares, did you hit your head? No. Ares cupped Kelvin's face with both hands. His voice came out cracked, disbelieving, reverent. My love, you're pregnant. Kelvin froze. The room went silent. What? No, Ares gently shut him up with a finger on his lips. Alpha pregnancies are rare, but not impossible, and I know what I heard. Kelvin threw a pillow at him. Stop imagining. But Ares only smiled softly. A predator's smile. I can hear their hearts, Kelvin. 2 of them. The doctor. Visit confirmation. Chaos. The Royal Medical Wing nearly collapsed from tension. Ares stood beside Kelvin like a ticking bomb. His aura was suffocating. Guards fainted just from being near him. When the doctor touched Kelvin's wrist, Ares growled so loudly the walls shook. Kelvin hissed at him. Stop growling at people. Aries responded instantly. He touched my pregnant husband. I should tear his arm off. Doctor, shaking. See, Commander. Please. The exam finished. The doctor gulped, looked at Aries, then Kelvin, and announced, Congratulations, you were pregnant. With twins. Kelvin. Twins? Aries grabbed the doctor by the collar. Is Kelvin safe? Are they safe? What do I do? Do I breathe? Do I need to kill someone? Kelvin slapped Aries' hand away. I am not fragile. Aries turned, dead serious. You are now. The feral, territorial Enigma era. Pregnancy turned Aries into a creature society had never prepared for. Aries refuses to let Kelvin walk alone. He lifts him everywhere. Bed to bathroom, bathroom to sofa, sofa to dining table. Kelvin screamed, Put me down! Aries replied, Not when you're carrying my entire universe. Kelvin tries working. Aries shuts it down. Kelvin, I have meetings. Aries, canceled. Kelvin, I have Mafia operations. Aries, I'll massacre them myself. Aries growls at anyone who breathes near Kelvin. A soldier walked too close. Aries, step back or lose your legs. Kelvin, he's 10 feet away. Aries, too close. Sleeps hugging Kelvin's belly. Every night he wraps around Kelvin like an oversized blanket. Kelvin, you're crushing me. Aries, nuzzles stomach. Shh, they like it. Kisses the baby bump every morning. Sometimes Kelvin wakes up to Aries whispering, Good morning, my little ones. Your papa loves you. Kelvin turns red and kicks him off the bed. Threatens the world daily. Anyone who dares look at Kelvin for more than 2 seconds receives a death sentence glare. Kelvin mutters, I'm pregnant, not dying. Aries answers immediately. Same thing. The attack? Survivors try to kidnap Kelvin. Rumors spread. Kelvin Throne, the ruthless mafia lord, was pregnant and therefore weaker. A group of surviving corrupt elites desperate for revenge planned a kidnapping. They attacked during Kelvin's afternoon walk in the garden. Kelvin fought back, but pregnancy slowed him. For 2 minutes, he was surrounded. For 2 minutes, he struggled. For 2 minutes, the world held its breath. And then Aries arrived. Not the commander. Not the Enigma. Not the lover. Something much, much darker. An entire night turned red. He destroyed 7 organizations by dawn. Every leader, every base, every bloodline connected to the incident. When Kelvin found him in the middle of the ruins, Aries looked like a monster from war, covered in blood, breathing hard, eyes glowing gold. Kelvin's heart clenched painfully. Aries looked up at him and broke. He sprinted, dropping to his knees, hugging Kelvin's belly with shaking hands. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I should have been holding you. I should never let you out of my sight. Kelvin touched his hair gently. For the first time in months, Kelvin saw the truth. Aries never stopped loving him. Not even when they were separated by fate. Not even when Kelvin turned into a mafia lord. Not even when Kelvin misunderstood him. Aries loved him, obsessively, violently, absolutely. And Kelvin felt it now in every breath. The birth of the twins. After months of chaos, cravings, mood swings, and Aries threatening hospitals weekly, the twins arrived. Labor was long. Kelvin's temper was worse. Aries nearly fainted 6 times and had to be thrown out by 5 nurses and 1 very brave doctor. When the babies were born, Aries cried louder than both infants combined. He held them, 1 in each arm, hands trembling, tears streaming uncontrollably. My babies. Kelvin, they're perfect. So tiny, so beautiful. Kelvin, look. Kelvin, I love you. Kelvin. Kelvin, exhausted, sweaty, and done with life, whispered, Fine. We'll have more. Aries froze. Stopped breathing. Blink. Blink? More? Kelvin smirked and kissed him softly. Aries made a strangled noise and passed out from joy, collapsing on the hospital floor with both babies safely clutched to his chest. Their happily ever after, Aries became a permanent koala. Twins in both arms. Kelvin tucked against his side, Family glare activated 24/7s. Kelvin threatens anyone who dares stare too long. Aries threatens everyone else. Their home is chaotic, passionate, dramatic, hilarious, and filled with a love so intense it burns. A dark romance, a warm family, a lifetime of devotion. Kelvin throne. Aries, Kaol the Alpha and the Enigma, who conquered fate together. Their ending wasn't tragedy. It was forever.